Chapter 30, 4 Staircases, Secrets, and Starman. Time skip hallway. Haley walks to her next class with Iris, as Iris speaks about starting to play music for everyone that she listens to. Haley smiles as she walks, and she could listen to Iris ramble on and on about herself without getting annoyed. Iris looks over to Haley, ready to listen to the Pointer Sisters. Haley blinked, but Iris continued before she could respond. I do have 2 record players for the boys, so they can try out singers like David Bowie or Led Zeppelin. She puts one finger on her chin as she thinks to herself and looks at Haley again. I think I know a perfect band that James might like. Haley looked at her, completely confused. She had absolutely no idea who any of those people were, but she listened anyway. Behind them, 2 much smaller footsteps hurried to keep up. Jake David and Rory McLagan. The first 2 years looked slightly overwhelmed by the moving maze that was Hogwarts. Jake leaned closer to Rory. Wasn't potions the other way? Rory frowned. I thought the stairs moved. Jake looks at him. They do. Rory shakes his head. That doesn't help. Haley glanced over her shoulder. You 2 all right back there? Jake nodded quickly. We're good. They absolutely were not good, but Iris slowed her walking slightly so they could keep up. Don't worry, she said casually. You'll only get lost about 100 times before Christmas. Jake stared at her. That's supposed to make me feel better. Haley chuckled quietly, and just as they turned the corner, they collided with James and his friends. James stood with Sirius, Remus, and Peter. James was whispering something quickly to Sirius, while Remus listened with a concerned expression, while Peter kept glancing around like he expected someone to overhear. Haley caught the tail of the whisper. After potions, James muttered. Sirius grinned as they're going through with the plan. Straight to the library. Remus rubbed his temple. You know if we get caught. We won't, Sirius said. James noticed Haley watching them, and his expression immediately changes to something far more innocent. Potions, he said casually. Sirius nodded. Thrilling. Haley raised a brow, but said nothing, and Iris leaned closer to her and whispered. They're definitely planning something. Haley looks over to Iris as she whispered back. Obviously. The classroom door opened, and a teacher's voice called out. Inside. Everyone moved immediately. Time skip potions class, 30 minutes later. The dungeon classroom smelled faintly of herbs, melted beetle shells, and something sweet Haley couldn't quite identify. At the front of the room stood Professor Horace Slughorn, his round face cheerful as he clapped his hands together. Well then, my young potion makers, he boomed warmly. Today we'll be brewing a strengthening solution, a very useful potion, especially if one finds themselves lifting heavy objects or outrunning a troll. A few students laughed. Slughorn waddled between the tables, peering curiously into cauldrons. Haley and Iris worked at one table, while Jake and Rory stood awkwardly nearby. The 2 first years looked completely overwhelmed. Jake whispered nervously, Are we supposed to be here? Rory shook his head. Probably not. Slughorn noticed them and blinked. Well now, he said pleasantly, you 2 look a bit geographically confused. Jake nodded quickly. We got lost. Slughorn chuckled. Happens all the time. Hogwarts staircases have a mischievous sense of humor. He gestured toward an empty corner table. Stay there for the moment. Perhaps you'll learn something useful before finding your way to the correct classroom. Jake and Rory nodded gratefully. Meanwhile, Iris leaned closer to the cauldron. You know, she whispered to Haley, David Bowie would absolutely be good potion brewing music. Haley blinked. Iris. What? Focus. Across the room, James leaned toward Sirius. Library, he whispered. Sirius grinned immediately. Peter looked nervous. Now. Remus sighed. If we get caught. Slughorn suddenly appeared beside them. Well now, Mr. Potter. James sat up straight instantly. Yes, Professor. Slughorn smiled pleasantly. I do hope that whispering concerns the potion and not mischief. Of course, sir. Slughorn nodded approvingly. Excellent spirit. The moment he moved away, Sirius leaned over again. Library. James grinned. A few minutes later, the potion simmered slowly. Haley crushed a few ingredients, while Iris stirred the cauldron with exaggerated seriousness. Jake leaned over their shoulder. Is it supposed to bubble like that? Haley glanced at it. Yes. Rory looked impressed. Cool. Iris whispered quietly. I'm still thinking about music. Haley sighed. I know. Imagine brewing potions while Led Zeppelin is playing. Iris. What? This is why the wizarding world is confused. Jake whispered to Rory. I don't know what she's talking about. Rory whispered back. Neither do I. After another 10 minutes, Slughorn clapped his hands. Well done, everyone. Leave your potions where they are. We'll evaluate them later. Students began packing up. James immediately stood. Sirius followed. Remus hesitated. Peter grabbed his bag. They were halfway to the door before Slughorn turned around. Where are you four heading? James didn't miss a beat. Library, Professor, research. Slughorn beamed. Ah, academic enthusiasm. Sirius nodded solemnly. Yes, sir. And the four of them disappeared out the door. Haley narrowed her eyes slightly. They're definitely up to something. Iris whispered back. Absolutely. Time skip, transfiguration, later. The classroom for Minerva, McGonagall, was bright compared to the dungeon. Sunlight streamed through tall windows. Students sat at wooden desks with small objects placed in front of them. Buttons. Today's lesson. Professor McGonagall stood at the front of the room, sharp-eyed and composed. We will continue practicing basic transfiguration, she said crisply. Buttons into beetles. Jake looked horrified. We're definitely not supposed to be here. Rory whispered back. Too late now. Haley sat beside Iris, while the two first years hovered awkwardly behind them. McGonagall noticed them almost immediately. Her eyebrow rose slightly. Mr. Jake. And Mr. Rory. First years. Yes, Professor. She stared at them for a moment and then sighed softly. Sit in the back and observe. They moved instantly. Meanwhile, Iris leaned toward Haley again. You know what would be great transfiguration music? Haley didn't even look up. I'm afraid to ask. The Pointer Sisters. Haley stared at her. Iris. What? We are turning buttons into beetles. And that sentence alone is strange enough. McGonagall tapped her desk with her wand. Begin. Students muttered spells quietly. Buttons began twitching. One student's beetle immediately ran off the desk. Jake whispered in awe. That's brilliant. Rory whispered back. That's terrifying. Iris flicked her wand. Her button turned into a beetle, then immediately flipped onto its back. Haley's transformation was nearly perfect. McGonagall walked past and nodded slightly. Very good. After several attempts, Iris managed a successful transformation. She looked very proud. See, she whispered, music improves magical focus. Haley shook her head but smiled. Time skip, Gryffindor common room, later. The fire crackled softly in the large stone fireplace. Students relaxed in armchairs after the long morning of classes. Haley sat on the couch, while Jake and Rory collapsed nearby. I never want to see a staircase again, Jake groaned. Rory nodded. Hogwarts is huge. Iris appeared a few minutes later, carrying a strange box with wires and a record sleeve. Haley immediately recognized the look on her face. Oh no. Iris grinned. Oh yes. She set the record player down on the table. Several students looked curious. What's that? Someone asked. A Muggle music player, Iris said proudly. Jake leaned forward. Wait, this is the music you were talking about. Yes. She pulled out the vinyl record. Everyone, Iris announced dramatically, prepare yourselves. Haley rubbed her temple. This is going to cause chaos. Iris placed the record on the player. The needle dropped. Music crackled softly before starting. Students looked confused, then curious, then intrigued. Jake blinked. Okay, that's actually good. Rory nodded slowly. Yeah. Haley leaned back in the chair with a small smile. Iris crossed her arms proudly. Told you. And somewhere far away in the castle, however, James, Sirius, and Peter were definitely not doing library research. They were planning for something for a friend in need. Few hours later, the fire crackled inside the Gryffindor common room as students relaxed after the long day of classes. Iris stood proudly beside the strange Muggle machine sitting on the table. The record player. Haley leaned back against the couch, while Jake and Rory sat on the floor staring at it like it might explode. You're sure this is safe? Jake asked. Yes, Iris said confidently. Mostly. Haley sighed. That word worries me. Before Iris could answer, the portrait hole opened. James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter climbed into the room. They looked suspiciously pleased with themselves. Remus looked tired. James stopped halfway across the room. What is that? Iris grinned. Perfect timing. Iris slid a vinyl record out of its sleeve. You lot, she announced dramatically, are about to hear something brilliant. She placed the record down. The needle dropped. Soft crackling filled the room. Then music began. A dreamy guitar and piano echoed through the common room. The voice followed. There's a starman waiting in the sky. Several students froze. The sound was completely unlike wizarding music. Sirius slowly stepped closer to the table. What is this? Iris pointed proudly. David Bowie. Sirius tilted his head as the chorus swelled. Let all the children boogie. His eyebrows slowly lifted. This is brilliant. Haley blinked. That was fast. Sirius pointed at the record player. This sounds like music from another planet. Iris grinned. That's sort of the point. Jake whispered to Rory. I think Sirius found his favorite. Rory nodded. Yeah. Sirius folded his arms, completely absorbed in the music now. Play another. Iris switched the record. This one, she said, is louder. She dropped the needle again. A slow guitar filled the room. Students leaned closer as the music built. Then the voice began. There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold. The room grew quieter. The music slowly climbed like something magical. Sirius leaned forward. This is incredible. Iris pointed proudly. Led Zeppelin. The song continued building, powerful and mysterious. Ooh, it makes me wonder. James laughed. This sounds like a wizard song. Remus rubbed his temple. It really does. Sirius looked delighted. I want more of this band. Haley leaned toward Iris. You've created a monster. Iris whispered proudly. I know. James stepped closer to the table now. All right, he said. What's mine? Iris flipped through the records thoughtfully. Oh, I have the perfect one. She placed the vinyl down. The needle dropped. Piano exploded through the room. Mama. Several students jumped. James blinked slowly. That's dramatic. Iris nodded proudly. Queen. The powerful music filled the entire common room. Sirius grinned. This sounds like something you'd sing before a Quidditch match. Remus muttered. That is not how Quidditch works. James looked thrilled. This is brilliant. Jake whispered to Rory. I think James just adopted that band. Rory nodded. Definitely. Remus had stayed quietly in an armchair near the fire. Iris noticed him watching. Oh, she said thoughtfully. I know yours. Remus looked suspicious. You do? Yes. She placed another record down. Soft piano filled the room. Gentle and warm. It's a little bit funny. Remus blinked slightly. The song was quiet compared to the others. Haley glanced toward him. You all right? Remus gave a small smile. I like this one. Iris pointed proudly. That's Elton John. The chorus floated through the room. This is your song. Remus leaned back, listening quietly. That's beautiful. Sirius looked at him. Moony likes something. Remus sighed. I like many things. James laughed. This is brilliant. Soon half the common room had gathered around the record player. Sirius demanded more Led Zeppelin. James wanted Queen again. Remus quietly asked what other piano music existed. Peter looked completely overwhelmed. Jake leaned toward the speaker. So Muggles just listen to this all the time. Iris nodded proudly. Yes. Rory stared at the machine. They're geniuses. Haley leaned back with a small smile. You've just changed Hogwarts forever. Iris grinned. Good. Oh, boys, I have another record player for you so you can listen to your favorites whenever you want. Just make sure to keep the room quiet if you're planning on playing it at night so the rest of Gryffindors can sleep. James smirked. No promises. Chapter 30, 5 Honeydukes and Hidden Feelings. Time skip courtyard. The courtyard was filled with students. Some older students were talking about NEWTS and OWLS, while younger students like Jake and Rory spoke about their classes. Haley and Iris was sitting on one of the benches, chatting before Iris gasps and grabs Haley's hand, and she looks over to her. It's our time. Haley looks at her confused. For what? Iris smiles. We can go to Hogsmeade. We get to finally know the shop James was talking about. Haley's eyes brightened at that. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Iris nods. We get to see what Zonkos look like. Haley taps a finger on her chin as she thinks. And Honeydukes. They start to talk about what they're going to do once they're there. Then, as Iris is speaking, Haley looks at her as she does a little smile. Her blue eyes looks bright as looking away as she speaks. For a moment, Haley looks away as she thought about things, like James and his friends acting suspicious. How Snape avoided the Gryffindor common room more often than he did when last 2 years, but Iris snapped her out of her train of thought. Iris looks at her. Are you okay? Haley nods. Yeah, I was just thinking. Iris looks at her for a moment before nodding. Time skip Hogsmeade. After McGonagall gathered up all the year 3s, everyone went to Hogsmeade. As everyone is walking, the village slowly appeared through the light morning fog. Crooked chimneys, snow-dusted rooftops, and glowing shop windows that made the entire street feel warm despite the winter chill. Students immediately scattered the moment they were released. Haley and Iris stepped onto the main street, snow crunching beneath their boots. Haley slowly turned in a circle, taking everything in. Well, she said, this definitely beats studying in the common room. Iris laughed quietly, just slightly. Their eyes immediately landed on the bright pink and gold window display of Honeydukes. Chocolate frogs hopped lazily inside their boxes, while jars of colorful sweets buzzed and fizzed with magic. Haley pointed toward the door. First stop. Iris didn't even argue. Time skip Honeydukes. The moment they stepped inside, a warm, sugary smell wrapped around them. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, stacked with every kind of magical sweet imaginable. Jars clinked softly as enchanted candies bounced inside them. Iris walked straight toward a display of chocolate frogs. She picked up a box and turned it over in her hands. I've heard the cards move, she said. Haley grabbed one too. Only one way to find out. They walked up to the counter, where the shopkeeper waited. Haley set her box down along with a small bag she had filled with fizzing Whizbees and a handful of sugar quills. Iris placed 2 chocolate frog boxes down and a small jar of acid pops. The shopkeeper rang them up. That'll be 4 sickles and 8 nuts. Haley dug into the small coin pouch, She carried and counted out the silver and bronze coins carefully before sliding them across the counter. Iris paid for her things next, tucking the sweets into her satchel once they were wrapped. The moment they stepped back outside, Iris immediately opened one of the chocolate frog boxes. The frog leapt out before she could grab it. Haley caught it midair. "First rule," Haley said, holding it up triumphantly. "Never underestimate chocolate." Iris snorted. Time skip, a little farther down the street. They wandered past several small shops before another caught Iris's attention. The windows of Scrivenshaft's quill shop were filled with elegant feather quills that shimmered in the light. Inside, the shop smelled faintly of parchment and ink. Quills floated gently above the display table, slowly spinning so customers could see them. Iris carefully picked up a pale silver feather quill. "Oh, this one writes smoother than my school one," she said, testing it on a scrap piece of parchment. The ink flowed perfectly. Haley wandered around the shop before finding a darker quill with deep blue feathers. She tested it. The writing came out bold and neat. "Okay, this one is actually good." They both walked to the counter again. Iris paid 2 sickles for the silver quill. Haley paid 3 sickles for the blue-feathered one. Haley twirled the new quill between her fingers as they stepped back outside. "Remus is going to be very proud of this responsible purchase." Iris raised an eyebrow. "You bought sweets 5 minutes ago." Balanced decision-making. Time skipped back on the main street. The wind picked up slightly as they continued walking. Students filled the street, laughter echoing between the buildings. Iris pointed across the road toward another shop. "That place looks interesting." The sign above the door read Dervish and Banges. Inside were magical instruments and small enchanted gadgets. Haley immediately spotted a small, enchanted compass that spun whenever someone nearby cast a spell. She picked it up. "That's actually useful." Iris found a small, enchanted parchment set that copied notes automatically if 2 people shared it. Imagine using this during lectures. Haley grinned. Or during exams. They paid a few more coins before leaving again, their bags now slightly heavier. Time skipped Zonkos. The bell above the door jingled the moment Haley pushed it open. Immediately, a burst of laughter and small explosions echoed through the shop. The inside of Zonkos was pure chaos. Shelves leaned crookedly under the weight of prank items. Boxes rattled and shook like they were alive. A display near the window kept randomly bursting into harmless clouds of purple smoke, while a group of older students tested something that sounded suspiciously like a screaming teacup. Iris stopped just inside the doorway and her eyes widened. "Oh, this is exactly what James described." Haley folded her arms as she scanned the room. "I'm suddenly understanding why the professors hate this place." A loud pop went off behind them. Both girls jumped slightly before turning to see a box labeled Fanged Frisbees, slightly less dangerous version, snapping its little teeth at anyone who walked too close. Iris burst out laughing. Haley grinned. "Okay, I might like it here." They slowly walked deeper into the shop. A display table near the center held jars filled with tiny silver pellets labeled Dung Bombs. Haley picked one up cautiously. "This seems illegal." Iris leaned over to read the label, guaranteed to clear any room in seconds. Haley raised an eyebrow. "Remind me to never give this to Sirius." A boy nearby dropped one by accident. The smell spread through the shop instantly. Half the students groaned while the shopkeeper yelled, "Outside if you're testing those." Haley quickly placed the jar back down. "Yeah, definitely illegal." They moved on. Another shelf held small paper packages labeled Peruvian Instant Darkness Powder. Iris carefully picked one up. "What does this do?" Haley read the instructions. "Apparently it creates instant darkness when thrown." Iris blinked. "That seems extremely useful." "For pranks," Haley added. "Obviously." They placed one in their small basket, Further down the aisle, Haley spotted something that made her grin immediately. Trick wands. She grabbed one and flicked it dramatically. Instead of a spell, the wand loudly squawked like a chicken. Iris nearly doubled over laughing. Haley stared at the wand. Okay, that's amazing. She added one to the basket. Nearby, Iris found a small box labeled sneezing powder. She opened it slightly and read the description. Produces uncontrollable sneezing for 30 seconds. Haley slowly looked at her. You're thinking about Snape, aren't you? Iris closed the box quickly. I'm not saying yes. Haley laughed. Add it to the basket. By the time they reached the counter, they had gathered. One trick wand. A small pouch of Peruvian instant darkness powder. A packet of sneezing powder. A tiny box of fizzing firecrackers. The shopkeeper rang them up. 5 sickles. Haley pulled out her coin pouch again and counted the silver coins before placing them on the counter. Iris grabbed the bag of pranks once they were wrapped. The moment they stepped outside into the snowy street again, Iris looked at the bag like it held treasure. Haley glanced sideways at her. You're planning something. Iris smiled innocently. I learned from the best. Haley raised an eyebrow. James. Iris nodded proudly. Haley shook her head with a small laugh. Merlin helped Hogwarts. Snow continued falling lightly around them as they walked down the street, their bags now filled with sweets, quills, and just enough mischief to cause trouble later. Time skipped back outside. Snow had started to fall lightly now. Haley popped a fizzing Whizbee into her mouth. Immediately, her feet lifted a few inches off the ground. Iris burst out laughing as Haley grabbed the edge of a street sign to steady herself. Okay, Haley said once she landed again. Worth it. Iris shook her head, still smiling. They continued down the snowy street together, bags filled with sweets, new quills, and enchanted trinkets. Hogsmeade buzzed with laughter and magic around them. Haley notices a cafe called Madame Puddifoot's Tea Shop, and she tilts her head slightly as she thinks about taking Iris there next year, for their first date, if she ever asks her out. And for the first time since the school year started, everything felt wonderfully normal. Chapter 36, Anything for Our Moony. Time skip, Gryffindor Common Room. Haley's POV. Haley and Iris arrives at the Gryffindor Tower, holding bags of the stuff they bought at Hogsmeade. Iris looks over to Haley. I wonder how the first years will react to these. Haley looks at the bags from Zonko's and she shrugs her shoulders. I don't know. Guess we'll find out. Iris nods, and they both walk into the common room and notices how quiet the room is. Haley looks at Iris, confused, as Iris looks at her back before shrugging her shoulder as Haley mutters. Either James and his friends are pulling a prank, or whatever they're whispering about. Jake and Rory ran over to Haley and Iris, and Haley snapped out of her train of thoughts, and she hugs Jake back as Rory hugs Iris. Haley laughs. Hey, easy there. Did the castle collapse while we were gone or something? Iris chuckled, carefully setting her Zonko's bag down before hugging Rory back properly. Haley glanced down at Jake, noticing the way he kept glancing nervously toward the rest of the common room. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Something definitely happened. And judging by the way everyone kept whispering, it probably involved James. Haley sighed quietly to herself. Merlin helped me. If James had caused chaos again while she and Iris were gone, she was absolutely making him deal with the consequences this time. No rescuing him. No covering for him. No. A loud whisper suddenly came from the corner near the fireplace. She's back. Haley froze. Her eyes slowly lifted. Half the common room was now looking at her. Haley blinked. Okay, she muttered under her breath. She looked down at Jake again. What did my brother do this time? Time skip, library. James's POV. James was in the library with Sirius, who was sat with his feet up, while Peter was looking around to see if the teacher is watching. Remus shook his head, but listens to James. James notices something in the books and he looks at them as he points to the chapter. Found it! And Merlin's beard. Sirius perked up slightly. That good. James turned the book around so they could see the heading. Advanced Transfiguration. Human to Animal Metamorphosis. Peter blinked rapidly. That sounds illegal. Not illegal, Sirius said with a grin. Just strongly discouraged. Remus sighed quietly. There's a difference. James ignored them both, already reading faster. All right, listen to this. He cleared his throat dramatically. To become an animagus, the witch or wizard must maintain a mandrake leaf in their mouth for an entire lunar month. Sirius's quill stopped spinning. A whole month, he said. James nodded, still reading. No swallowing, no removing it, and if the leaf is lost, the process must begin again. Peter groaned. James smirked. Then try not to choke on a leaf. Remus leaned forward slightly, interest replacing some of his earlier hesitation. What comes after the month? James turned the page. Right! After that, the leaf must be placed in a crystal phial under moonlight, mixed with dew and... He squinted. A strand of the wizard's hair. Sirius leaned forward now too, his earlier laziness gone. And... James kept reading. Then, during a thunderstorm, the potion must be consumed while focusing on the desired animal form. Peter's eyes widened. Desired. James grinned. The book says the form is a reflection of your inner self. We won't know what we are until we shift. Remus looked at the page, his voice tight. You aren't doing this for the adventure, James. You're doing this because of the full moons. Sirius tilted his head thoughtfully. If I turn into something ridiculous, I'm blaming you. You'll probably end up a rat, James said casually. Peter froze. Oi. Remus pinched the bridge of his nose. You do realize, he said quietly, that animagus transformation is ministry-regulated magic. Sirius waved a hand. Details. You have to register. Technicalities. It's extremely dangerous. James shut the book with a quiet thud and leaned back in his chair, grinning at the three of them. But imagine it if we could actually do it. James leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. We could be there with you, Remus, every month. A werewolf is only a danger to humans, not to other animals. Sirius's grin turned sharp and determined. No more locking you in a shack alone, Mooney. We'd be a pack. Peter swallowed. Remus looked between them. James leaned forward again, lowering his voice like he was planning a heist. No teachers, no prefects, no one knowing it's us. Sirius sat up straight. I'm in. Peter hesitated. Do we die if we mess it up? James shrugged. Probably. Remus groaned softly. You three are going to get us expelled. James tapped the parchment where he'd been taking notes. Or, we make sure our best friend never has to spend a transformation in the dark again. Across the library, Madame Pince suddenly cleared her throat loudly. Peter jumped so hard, he nearly knocked the book off the table. Sirius quickly pulled his feet off the chair. Remus calmly turned the page of his book like they had been studying the entire time. James tried and failed not to laugh.